Harrison.
Today I want to talk to you about kind of how things are interconnected. It's really important that often we take a look at what goes on beyond just sort of the news cycle on TV, and how the humans are interconnected with nature and how we are all intertwined, helping you and I to navigate more easily how we interact with each other. There is an amazing science project, and I call it that. Actually, it's technically called ART, only because the federal government has been keeping an eye on this thing in West Hollywood. Yep. It's a woman who comes and helps us here on GoHarrison. She's from Great Britain. Her father was one of the guys who engineered the entire hydrogen fuel cell industry in Great Britain and created availability for all of the taxis to go hydrogen fuel cell. She's quite brilliant. And what she was able to do is make plants talk. Now, a talking plant means that it actually has to understand what's going on, and then we have to sort of blow apart the assumption that they're stupid. They're photosynthetic green things that look pretty, and I spray water on it. Well, there's a little more. The movie Avatar was closer than you imagine. So I went down there, and I'm going to take you there right now, and I'm going to have you listen. She's put little electrodes on plant leaves, and when you touch them, they react. And not the electrode you touch, I mean the plant somewhere up high. And all their roots are connected in the soil, and the plants on the other side of the room react when the other ones react. They react to emotions. Remember, they don't have any eyes or anything. It's really amazing. So, of course, the federal government is slightly interested in this because it turns out plants are also great lie detector machines. So let's give our first installment and say hi to Mylese Petrie and her project at the Pacific Design Center in West Hollywood in our official first ever Dr. Strangelove Report.
GoHarrison. The Dr. Strangelove Report.
Mylese Petrie has created this environment, and I could really describe it. It might take several hours to really kind of make the point, but we're standing in basically a pitch black room with translucent dots. They look like stars on a dark room with black lighting. And around me are a variety of different plants of the fern families and things like that. It's very kind of tropical. It's a little humid in here with some subtle lighting. And this noise you're hearing in the background, well, I'll have you explain. There's actual noise coming from the room, but it's not something you're playing on tape.
No, it's actually live generated from the electromagnetic emissions from plants, and those are being fed into a computer program I wrote in SuperCollider, which is an audio generating language that makes the music that you hear from the signals.
So what you're saying is plants are actually sentient in many ways. We imagine humans and maybe a dolphin or two, a couple of sparrows, a pigeon, and a rat. They can sort of feel heat and pain and react and respond. But plants equally, this noise is they're just sitting on their own. They're talking to each other.
Well, that's hard to say. I mean, I think we have a tendency to kind of, anthropomorphize plants when we discover that they do have this sort of sentience. But it would be inappropriate for me to describe any of these reactions in that way, because I actually really don't know. But what I do know is that they're constantly giving off an energetic signature that has an amplitude and a frequency to it that is much like the signature that you get, a bioelectric signature that you get from humans. So you can take that information and use it to create other types of information that work on waveforms, which indeed are sound. And interestingly, with sound, plants respond to sound at the same temporal rate as humans do. So it's a good medium by which we can bridge this sort of gap that exists between us and them, where they live on a much slower time frame. They can live for hundreds of years, and they take days or weeks or years to move. And so we have this discordant kind of appreciation of them as living things because of that discrepancy and not being able to see them move. And so this movement and sound brings to life the fact that, they are indeed in an interchange with us at all times. So that's the point of it being sonically based at the moment.
Harrison with you. We are standing in the Pacific Design Center up on the second floor in a dark room that sort of reminds you of going to Griffith Park and being inside of the the dome, looking up at the stars. It has the same sort of night sky feel in here, surrounded with some humectants, some plants of the fern variety, and they're communicating just because she's put special electronic clips, if you will, on the plants, and it's the sound of them in their natural state doing their thing. Now, we've all heard that plants have some level of emotion or whatever. We're going to touch some of these, and I understand the sound will change because they will be responding to human touch. Is that right?
Mm-hmm, that's right, yeah. I designed this piece in two ways. One, that if you stand here, you can hear that there's an organic kind of constant movement in the music, which is descriptive of the fact that they're constantly emitting, a changing current. But then also, when we interact with them, those currents become much more elevated, and so we can trigger and generate from that triggering new sounds that are much more easy for us to distinguish.
Let's interact. What do you want to do? This plant? Would you?
Sure. They're all actually, they've all begun to kind of interact with each other now. They've lived in here for a week. And so now when I touch one, often sounds are actually on a totally different plant will be triggered, because they apparently, plants have an ability to send information to one another regardless of time and space. So this is perhaps what they're doing. Before
you touch it, because this is really exciting, and I've behaved. I came in here as you instructed, sat down, got the vibe, got friendly with the plants. I haven't touched one to have this thing trigger a noise yet. But we're also recording this in stereo, and the point is so that you can really get the vibe of what it feels like in here using stereo, and you'll hear noises come from different directions and plants from different directions, so that space is really important too. So we're going to touch this plant, and I'll be really quiet, and we'll hear the music shift.
Yeah, you're going to hear maybe a squeaky sound or crickets, maybe some bells, some tones, some kind of resonant whoo, like windy sounds, and those are all plants being triggered by touching.
So you're squeezing the leaves now. We're talking to Mylese Petrie. She is genius would probably be a polite and soft term for it. She has found and invented a way to connect with plants and allow us to hear what plants are going through real-time, live, using sound. And so we're in the Pacific Design Center here. We brought you here on GoHarrison on 90.7 FM in order to show you this extraordinary new technology. I'm standing in front of a fern plant, and I'm going to grab the leaves now and rustle them. And this will give you an idea when you're running through the woods or crashing through your house plants, what they actually experience from your human body, which is more like a bull in a china shop in some ways. Now what I'm doing, I'm taking one leaf here and listen to the change, and Mylese is not going to touch anything. I'm not going to touch anything. It's a long leaf, a corn plant basically is what this looks like. So you have this, it's what?
It's a Dracaena.
There you have it, right there. See? Multiple syllables too.
It's a typical house plant. These are philodendrons and Dracaenas and
Yeah, so it's like a very, very, very dark green, looks like a corn plant, called a Dracaena. Thank you for that. I've always wondered what mine was at home. And I'm going to take this long leaf, and I'm just going to roll it gently up alongside itself and hold the microphone up here in stereo and take a listen to the difference, okay? We find that all the leaves on a plant, high or low, are basically real-time connected to the plant. It's not like it's a slow, syrupy response to the plant's brain. It's instant. You do this with a leaf. Hear that? And it just instantly reacts. So they're incredibly electronic, aren't they? What have you learned about plants? Like, do they enjoy being stroked? Do they hate it? What have you learned?
Well, what I found that doing this, which is interesting because we're in the middle of a museum, concrete walls, and building an environment like this flourishes. And I think it's because we come in and we've created a beautiful environment for plants to live in. And we're paying them a lot of attention, and we're cooing and oohing and eyeing over them, and they like it. They grow. So I've learned that, and I've certainly learned other things. Like it does not take one plant of the same species to create a reaction in another plant of a different species. Like it really, and they don't like chicken wire. Like I build the structure underneath all of this in chicken wire to create, mounds that look like sort of mountains and things like that, or little hills or whatever. And they freak out as soon as I bring chicken wire in here. So
I do too when I see that stuff.
Yeah.
It's Guantanamo on steroids. It's just an accident waiting to happen. We're talking to Mylise Petrie. She is a genius, as I mentioned earlier, understated to be sure, standing in the Pacific Design Center in West Hollywood, up on the second floor in a big dark room with black lighting and, somebody got touched.
This is how this entire thing started with Cleve Baxter, who I had the opportunity to meet after he vetted me over like 4 years. I had to build the thing and get it prepared and show it to somebody, and then he finally believed that I'd done this. And I got to meet him, and he discovered this, which ended up actually being called the Baxter effect, this entire thing. The Bose-Baxter effect, because he was doing lie detection, and as a sort of jest, teaching his FBI students lie detection, was like, okay, what if I put an electrode on the leaf of a plant and burn the leaf? What's going to happen? And he realized that there was this massive signal coming off the plant when he decided to burn it. And that, from there, his entire life was totally enraptured with doing plant communication experiments. It is now about, now he works with the white blood cells and figuring out that all cellular life is actually in constant communication. And we both agree that, what this is working with electromagnetics, and electromagnetics are literally like a harmonic of something happening more on the quantum field. So.
Harrison, with you, we're talking to Mylise Petrie. She has this really amazing, you have to come and check this out, seriously, in the Pacific Design Center in West Hollywood, California. If you're obviously outside of Los Angeles, there's a website, I imagine, that people can explore. What would that be, Mylise?
It's www.soniferousearth.com.
Soniferous.com?
Soniferous Earth.
I love it. That which eats sound. We're standing here looking at a variety of different house plants that are comfortably lowly lit in sort of amber tones in a black light, black room with day glow, sort of little stars. You feel like you're in an astrophysicist's happy room, and it's humid and it's wonderful, and there's no movement in here, but the noise you're hearing in the background are plants literally just in their natural state, kind of humming and vibing with each other. We've learned that they react to people who have bad intentions. Mylise said that she's brought chicken wire in here and they freak out. Now, plants don't have eyes, and if they're freaking out at people's intent to actually, for real, burn a plant and it freaks out, they have some kind of ESP if they can't see chicken wire, but they know it's there. If they read your intent, this is really deep.
Yeah, and that's why it's art. Because if it wasn't art, I'd probably be in some trouble, as a lot of people who have looked into this have been. Because you're suggesting that a plant has the ability to both receive and process and transmit information. And really, in biology, that's reserved for those that have a nervous system. And since there is no nervous system on a plant, it cannot, in terms of our academia, be sentient. But this sort of, subscribes to a different theory where that's not necessarily the basis for intelligence. And so the easy way to present this is as an art project, because it allows people to come in here without any, pretension of what this means scientifically, whether it's based on theory or whatever, and actually experience it and decide for themselves how they feel.
We're touching simple leaves on plants, which she has wired up with electrodes, and it shows that the plants are not only alive, but they're sentient, they feel, they think in whatever a plant's version of that, and they're responding to human touch. She's actually seen growth of these things, so they respond favorably to happiness. And we've all been told, play nice music when you leave your house plants. They actually enjoy it. It sounds like it's probably true.
I think so. And people ask me, do you think they like the music that you're making them make? To some degree, they have, I feel, a bit of control over it. So I would suggest that, yeah, they do.
Harrison with you. You're listening to Go Harrison. We are talking to Mylese Petrie. Mylese Petrie has created this extraordinary science project, which blows me away because it sort of confirms everything I've been anecdotally told, that plants feel, they sense, they're sensitive, they're emotional. And it turns out while standing in here, we're actually experiencing this and also learning what Mylese has learned about what plants seem to like and dislike. We were all told, many of us, that plants like turn on the stereo when you leave the room and play soft music. And so far, it seems that maybe that's not a bad idea.
Dorothy Retallick did a lot of research with plants and music and playing plants different kinds of music to see how they would react and so on and so forth. And of course, you know, I guess this is what the sort of the end of her research has become known as, is that plants prefer Mozart over rock music. So if you sort of blare some crazy death metal, your plant's most likely going to try and go away from the source of music and may die if it can't get away from it. So that says a lot about the sort of, you know, cellular activity, and I think that's important for our experience and for theirs to leave this running all the time. It has to be something that's actually pleasing, because it's important to keep them happy when they're living in an enclosed environment, and it's important to definitely keep some nice sounds around your plants for sure.
Harrison with you. We're talking to Mylese Petrie here on Go Harrison. We are in the Pacific Design Center in West Hollywood, California, which is a huge glass structure, basically everything from a museum to a furniture retail center. It's kind of an all-in-one deluxe multi-wango zizmomanometer of modern malls. And inside is this primordial, cool, dark room where Mylese Petrie has taken a variety of different mainstream houseplants, hooked them up with electrodes, and the noise you're hearing in the background are literally the plants still, not being molested. There's no wind, no breeze in here, no dogs taking a whiz on the plant, nothing. They're just in their natural homeostatic, natural habitat, if you will, just communicating with their own vibe, if you will, and it actually creates music. Now, if we were to start yelling at each other in a terrible argument, what would the plant music start to sound like?
It would probably become a lot less melodic, and you'd mostly hear the extreme ends of the design of the sound, so a lot of zinging and like pulsing, and probably a lot of hard bass tones, very abrupt, not very long tones like you're hearing now, and you would hear, which you'll hear now if I touch all the ends of this plant, you'll hear, you know, all these sort of extra sounds that are only happen when they reach a certain threshold. So those would all be going off. So I'll let go now, and I'll quiet down. There we go. So we had someone come in with high heels, and all of the plants went off, and they were pretty upset about it, and so she left. And it was funny. We very rarely get anyone that comes in here with, you know, any sort of vibe like that, because it's hard to have that sort of vibe. That's why I build this environment the way it is, because you really have to drop your issues when you do this and be open-minded and allow yourself to communicate with another life form. So it's important that we chill out, and that's why, you know, take your shoes and socks off when you stand in some soil, and we go back to the way we were before we got all technoed out, even though this is about technology.
So let's explore. This is just I'm making this up, but since the plants have this, you know, babies and dogs, or, you know if somebody's a good or a bad person when they walk in the room, so the story goes. And the plants reacted to a woman in high heels. Have you ever had just a guy who might not have been an upstanding fellow walk in here, and the plants, like, do they know if somebody's a good person or not?
I think they're sensitive to intention. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, what if I think about burning them or something? And it doesn't work because they don't really mean it. But if you do mean it, like, I come in with chicken wire and I mean I'm going to use that chicken wire in here, and they don't like it. So, I mean, I know that they don't like it because they freak out. I mean, you can hear it.
As we close this segment, Mylese, with your permission, and now I'm suddenly very protective, like they're little babies and you don't want to upset them, but can we make a little bit of a ruckus and then just capture, and we're not going to touch the plants at all, but just note how they've responded to intensity in our energy? Do you mind if can we just yell for a second?
It won't work.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because basically, like, if you don't mean it, if you're not really pissed off, if you're not angry, it's not gonna happen. Like, you can yell and jump around, and they literally will. It's like a your cat. If you've got a cat, if your cat falls off somewhere and falls, and you laugh at your cat looks embarrassed, right? But if you try and laugh at your cat and kind of poke fun at your cat looks at you like you're an idiot. And this is the kind of thing, like, unless you really mean it, you really won't get a reaction. And that's been like, because I have to try, when I'm writing the music, I have to try to crash the program, if you like. So I have to try to make the plants really, really overreact the most that they could possibly ever react. So I've tried all sorts of ways to get my plants to get really sensitive. And they're never as sensitive as they are right now. Like, for example, just being able to touch the edges of this little plant.
And let's work. I'm going to be quiet. And listen to that. You're hearing live audio of plants hooked up to electrodes responding to human touch. So go ahead, Mylise, and let's just hear this again.
Yeah, and I just want to say before we do that, this actual plant, the stem on this plant, is not touching any electrode. It's on another part of the plant completely. And there are also sounds from other plants that are being triggered right now when I just touch the ends of this leaf.
And if you took a scissors and just snipped the end off, what does it do? You'd
probably hear something similar to that.
Wow. This is so amazing. Thank you for this tour. I love the part that they actually feel our intent when it's genuine and they react. I mean, they are real lie detectors that you could bring in chicken wire, and without eyes it knows what it is and it freaks out. That means that everything else we do, it knows what it's doing, and they're communicating, much as the movie Avatar, they're communicating with the whole forest, one plant.
And that brings up a really important point, which is something I believe is possibly happening, which is that in the Amazon and other places where we're clear cutting, I reckon that as soon as these CEO guys are up there with their pens and papers and maps and crossing out areas that are going to be clear cut, plants actually know about it. And what happens when plants feel threatened is they go into a state of comatose where they literally just shut down. So that means that they're not taking up CO2 and exhausting oxygen, which means that when we do calculations for how much CO2, etc., is in the atmosphere, we ought to be considering that we may be frightening plants into basically non-activity, and that should be part of our calculation.
Wow. Let's close with that, because that's some food for thought that has just ruined my appetite wildly. But it's wonderful to know about, so that we can imagine for every action there's an equal and opposing reaction. And that Mr. Newton was right in so many ways, wasn't he? The apple falls, but it falls up too. Thank you so much, Mylise Petrie. Again, we are standing in the Pacific Design Center in West Hollywood, California, in her, what do you call this room?
It's called Soniferous Eden.
Where the plants are wired up to electrodes, and it is just the coolest vibe in here, and you can touch them and they make noise because they respond. And if you come in angry, it will know and it will bust you before you have a chance to get fully in the room. I love this. Thank you so much, Soniferous.com. Harrison with you. You're listening to Go Harrison.
Harrison.